is up with so many adult children living at home? Am I right? I mean, as a Gen Xers, we were raised with the expectation that you had to be up or out of your parents' home by 18 or 21, and something was wrong with you if you hadn't done that. Not only was I raised with that narrative, I'm the author of a parenting book that is all about raising kids to be independent. So, when our 20-year-old son Sawyer moved back home, I needed it to be temporary. But it wasn't. I'm going to tell you our story, and Sawyer has given me full permission to do so. Sawyer went away to college, but he dropped out after his sophomore year. His intellectual brilliance turned out to be no match for the untreated ADHD and anxiety that our son faced. He moved off campus, got a job that paid minimum wage, grew increasingly depressed, and then in the weeks before the pandemic began, he suffered a mental health crisis. When the order to shelter in place came, we brought our son home. He confided to his dad and I that he feared he was never going to be able to make it alone in the real world. We didn't know what he was talking about. We had no clue what he was struggling with. We just knew he was smart and kind. And we also felt helpless. We realized we had no idea what role parents could play in the life of an adult child. I mean, he could have been in the army, right? Did we have any say over the state of his childhood bedroom? We knew he needed therapy, but he was an adult. Could we make him go? Could some therapist please tell us what to do? As things began to open up, I grew really afraid. I feared our family would be judged because now Sawyer was 22 and he was still living with us and not going back to school. I remember whispering to Dan, if he's still with us when he's 25, we'll have failed. Well, fast forward to today. Sawyer will soon be 27. He still lives with us. Well, it turns out our family's not so unique. Today, some of you know, you're relating, I can tell. It's all right, it's all good. Today in the United States, for the first time since the late 1940s, 1/3 of adult children are living in the parental home. That is half of 18 to 24-year-olds, 20% of 25 to 29-year-olds, and 12% of 30 to 34-year-olds. Now, many of them came home because of the pandemic, but when things began to ease up, millions stayed, like Sawyer. With this incredible trend in front of me, I began to think, is it failure? Or are we actually in the midst of a profound shift, a return to the way humans have always lived, which is in multi-generational families? After all, in many countries around the world, living multi-generationally never was not the norm. And for many folk here in the United States, it's been the way they've always lived too. So I began to think, instead of placing blame on the people who are living back at home, isn't the more interesting question, what was up in the late 1940s in the United States such that young adults started leaving home in droves? Here's what was happening. World War II had just ended. The government offered veterans the GI Bill, which helped them pay for college or trade school. Governments were also creating the conditions necessary to build cheap, single-family homes in this new concept called suburbs, which were springing up across the country. And get this, the federal minimum wage, which was relatively new in the late 40s, could support a family of 3. Only then did this notion that you have to be up or out of your parents' home by a certain age come into being. As you can see, it's not a biological imperative about adulting. It was simply a reflection of economic conditions already in place, plus capitalism, that encouraged and supported young adults to leave the parents' home and live and consume as individuals. Well, you don't need me to tell you that today's adult children face a different economy. and a different society. And oh, they're a little different than prior generations, too. Here's what I mean. Number one, we just went through a pandemic. We're facing climate change, which is a huge threat. We're facing rising authoritarianism and the uncertainty of war. It's a lot out there. Arguably, the world is a scarier place than it has been in a long time, and none of us know what to do. Number two, the costs of housing and college have risen astronomically, but wages have not kept up. So our adult children can be working a full-time job and not afford rent remotely near where that job is. That's not their fault. Number three, our adult children are more likely to have a diagnosis of a learning difference or a mental health challenge. And unlike prior generations, I see you, Gen X, who had to tough it out and pretend everything was fine, our kids are speaking up and seeking help, and that's a good thing. Number four, we might have overparented them a little bit. Nobody here, but people near here, overparented their now adult children, which means they had no free play, they were not allowed to talk to strangers, and we handled many of the tasks of their lives that they should have had the chance to handle for themselves. So if now, as adult children, they're a little reticent to get out there on their own in the world, maybe that's on us. And number five, the upside of the way we parented them, we're more bonded. We knew their friends. We knew their issues. We did their homework. Joking. Or am I? But seriously, when our son Sawyer was in crisis, that he felt that our home was a safe place he could return to, and he could open up to his dad and me about his pain and the uncertainty he felt about his future, we were profoundly moved. Because as Gen Xers, all right, I'll take that. Because as Gen Xers, we didn't have that kind of relationship with our parents. Let me return to our story. In that first year of the pandemic, Sawyer got himself into therapy. And I requested that we go into family therapy too, because I knew we needed to understand and unpack our dynamics with one another. Through therapy, I learned that I was afraid to raise some of these tough subjects with Sawyer, like the state of his room, and was he considering going back to school? And if he wasn't going to go back to school, maybe did he want to get a job? And I learned that I was afraid to bring up those topics because I was afraid of his reaction, that he would have big emotions. So I was trying to protect him from his own big emotions. I also learned I was afraid of his big emotions. So in avoiding the subject, I was protecting myself as well. And then I learned that all of this protecting I was trying to do was inadvertently sending my son a terrible message. Hey, son, I don't think you can actually handle these important next steps of adulting. Yeah, the parenting expert with the parenting book. Turns out I was completely in my kid's way. Well, in family therapy, we all learned you have to speak your mind. And we also all learned how to listen better, how to take that pause, how to take that deep breath, express gratitude, acknowledge the truths the others were sharing, maybe even offer support, but all the while never taking responsibility for someone else's situation. And when we learned to regularly communicate that way, boy, our family was completely repatterned. And here's what came of it. Sawyer began really adulting. He landed a fulfilling full-time job as an aide for small children with anxiety and ADHD. Talk about coming full circle. And Sawyer upgraded the decor of his childhood bedroom. Well, did you know research shows that when you do that, you make yourself and all the others around you feel like you are an adult? It's a small but big thing. And third, at age 23, Sawyer finally got his driver's license. And with each of these milestones attained, Dan and I would circle back to him and say, yeah, you're adulting. Well, then Sawyer really stepped up and started to pay his own way. You see, he'd been doing household chores for years, and now that he'd had this great job for a while, we knew his capacity to contribute had increased, meaning it's time to ask him to pay rent. When we raised it with him, he grew very emotional. He said he didn't think he could handle the responsibility, and he didn't want to let us down. You're laughing, but I'm thinking, what a love. I am. We knew from therapy that we were supposed to express this request and express confidence that he could handle it, and let him know that we would be there to support him in whatever way he needed in order to be successful. And Sawyer started paying rent. Small class. Well, then the tables really turned. In the span of a few months, both Dan and I experienced significant professional setbacks. And get this, now Sawyer, at the age of 25, was the only one in the house with a full-time job, a regular paycheck, and benefits. Who'd have thought? Sawyer was the one adulting while his parents were failing. And then things got really hard. I was actually supposed to be on this stage a year ago, but I lost my mother only days before TEDx 2025. In the last year of her life, Sawyer, Dan, and I were her caregivers, along with hired in-home help. The three of us would often huddle in tears of anguish and sometimes rage, because caregiving is sad and scary and hard. In one of those huddles, I looked up into Sawyer's face and I said, I used to think we'd all failed because you moved in with us, and now I don't have any idea how we'd be doing any of this without you. And Sawyer smiled and squeezed my shoulder and looked at me with the most loving nod. That kid. I don't know how long we'll be living together, but I'll tell you this, no one in our family has failed. I know that being an adult has nothing to do with where you live and everything to do with how you behave. And that it's not about rugged individualism. It's about taking responsibility and contributing and participating in a network of support that researchers call interdependence. Having lived it, having seen the benefits and blessings of this multi-generational living, I'm stunned. Where I once wanted nothing to do with it, now I know in my soul that these unanticipated extra years with our adult child Sawyer are truly bonus years. Thank you.